All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to our second Market Manager Lunch and Learn. Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Michael Green. I'm the Good Food New Mexico Coordinator and the Farmers Market Manager Liaison for the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association. So I've kind of scheduled all these Market Manager Lunch and Learns over the summer. We hope that you find them all very beneficial and so forth. So today's topic is market data. So yeah, we're going to do quick introductions of ourselves. Then we're going to go into Denise is going to tell us a little bit about market data. And then finally, we're going to have more of a discussion. So I would love you all to introduce yourselves. So Donna, if you could just say who you are and where you're from, I would appreciate it.
You're still on mute, Donna.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Donna Crispin, and I'm a new market manager for the Fort Sumner Farmers Makers Market. So I don't know much about market data, so hopefully you'll teach me today.
Excellent, great. Thank you so much for being here. All right, George, can you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Yes, I'm George. I'm from the Valencia County area. I run and operate two farmers markets, one in Bosque Farms, New Mexico. The other one is in Los Lunas, New Mexico. We've been doing this for several years, and I don't know anything, so I'm here to learn.
Awesome. We're happy you're here, George. Thank you. Denise, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, I think we all kind of know who you are, but
Not necessarily. Thank you, Michael. Hi, everybody. Denise Miller. I'm the Executive Director of the Farmers Marketing Association, and I'm going to be pretending I remember a lot of details about data. There's a lot that I can tell you, but probably more that you're going to all help each other even more than I will be able to share. But yeah, it's good to see everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
thank you, Denise. Glad you're here to share your knowledge. All right, Andrea, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Andrea Warner, and I've recently started working with the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association. And I also have been a market manager for the Silver City Farmers Market for the last 4 years. And I have quite a bit of experience with market data. I'm going to put in the chat right now, if that's okay, everyone, how to collect market data link. That talks about what is collected for market data that I got off of our website. And I'm also happy to be here and answer questions and learn. I'm working really closely. I'm sorry that our market manager is not here today, our new one, because I'm working really closely with her as well as she's training. So I've been answering a lot of market manager questions recently, and I'm happy to continue today.
Thank you, Andrea. And then finally, Carol, if you're there, if you could introduce yourself to the group.
Hello, I'm Carol Palmer, and I coordinate the Gallup Farmers Market. I am also going to keep my video off because I'm going to be eating lunch while we're doing this, and you don't need to see me doing that anyway. I think it's great that you guys are doing these webinars. I want to support that. And as Denise knows very well, market data is my nemesis. I just can't get it together. So I'm really interested to hear just to get me inspired to get it together this year. So thank you.
Thank you very much for being here, Carol. All right, so I'll turn it over to Denise, who's going to share some information about market data with us.
I'm going to try to be inspiring about market data because it is one of those tricky things that we really realize is not super easy to collect, but it is really important for lots of reasons that we'll talk about. And I will be trying to channel my inner Christina, because Christina was our, she was our research and evaluation guru, and she really managed the market data, and she loved data. So, I will try to channel her here. We miss her dearly. And I also want to I want to just go back a little bit in history, because the NMFMA, so we are now 28 years old, and and for at least probably 25 years, I'd have to really look back and see, but I think the organization really had a lot of foresight in its early days in lots of ways. I mean, it had a lot of foresight just in establishing the association and the services that it was bringing to farmers markets, really practical things like insurance for the farmers markets and things like that. But my predecessors, Esther and Sarah, they saw the importance of market data right from the get-go. And so we have an incredible history of market data and collecting it. And that, anytime you're looking at data, having the longer the period of time that you can look at data, the more information it's able to shed on things. So we're really fortunate that we have that historical that goes all the way back. And most of the things that we collect really go way back to the beginning. So we're going to talk about the different categories of the market data that we've got. I'm just looking at there is a, in addition to the link that Andrea kindly put in the chat, and the link, I'm just going to look at it really quickly here. The link gives you the real specifics of what we're collecting. So we'll probably just go through that. That might be a good way to organize our thoughts. But I'm just also looking up. There is something especially for Donna. I want to make sure that you know about we have a resource called, I'm going to just quickly share my screen, and then maybe Michael will find I'm not too good at talking and finding things online at the same time, but we'll tell you where you can find the resource. So let me just share my screen. I think this is it. Okay, can you guys see this? This is on the resource, and Michael, I'm sure and if you find the resource, you'll put the link. We have this on our website, and Donna, I don't know if you've seen this, and even George, this is really good because it summarizes even more than just about market data. So it kind of tells you, I'm just going to really kind of quickly scroll through, but it tells you what you can find on our website. And we have 2 websites. Well, we really have 3 if you count Double Up Food Bucks, but there's our consumer facing website, which is farmersmarketsnm.org. But there's also the NewMexicoFMA.org, which is for our farmers markets and our members. You can get to this one from the consumer website, but it's probably easier just to get there straight, New Mexico FMA, Farmers Marketing Association.org. And so this is the website that has a host of resources for market managers. And if you don't use it, you should check it out every once in a while. And so this shows you a bunch of different things that we have. This Growing with Goodness toolkit, which talks about marketing. You might find that helpful. None of you are starting a brand new farmers markets, but there's all kinds of general information, how to update your information. And I'm just scrolling. I hope I'm not making you dizzy, but it talks about the Double Up Food Bucks website, talks about the food access programs. This is just like one nice summary document that talks about a little bit about everything. And it talks about, if you needed a custom logo. And I'm really just trying to get to the part where it will say about market data. There is a liability insurance, and here's the little section on market data. So this has a general overview about market data and why it's important. And maybe I'm just going to stop here for a minute and talk about the reasons that it's important before we go into the different types that you'll be collecting. So, one of the most useful things, this first bullet point, tracking your market's progress over time, that is just, an internal management tool for you guys, because you're able to track over time how many vendors you had at your market different years, how many vendor days did they sell, what your customer counts looked like. So just for your own purposes, when you go to plan your market season, you have a record of this information. That's super important. It also is important for your own purposes because it will help you, ideally when you go to plan your promotional events and think about, well, am I going to do am I going to have food trucks on a certain day, or am I going to have, you can look and see what your customer counts were like in a different, as the season ebbs and flows. So maybe after Labor Day, your customer counts really drop off. And so then you would say, well, you might think to yourself, okay, that's not when I should plan a big event. I should plan the big event, looks like the 4th of July weekend was a peak weekend, or maybe 4th of July weekend, you have a low turnout because everybody goes on vacation. I mean, whatever it is, again, as a management tool for your market organization, hopefully these numbers help you do planning. This third bullet point, sorry, using sales and customers to attract vendors. That can be true. It may or may not be true, but if you had a farmer who was thinking about joining and he's like, well, I don't know, is it really going to be worth my time? You could say, well, the average sales that our vendors make are so-and-so. It just, again, gives you more information so that when you have questions about your market, whether they're from vendors or potentially you might be looking at, I guess this is the next bullet, community businesses. If you're looking to get support like a grant from a local business, you can show them how many customers you have on different days. So it's just internally helps with planning. And then again, it's showing, evaluating your schedule to see if your market season should be shortened or extended. The other thing that's not there, the bullet point that's missing from that list, and that is super important, I think it says this somewhere else, but I use this information every year during the legislative session. We go to our legislators and we're continuing to ask them for their monetary support for programs, and they like to know what it looks like in the world out there. What's the what are the customer counts looking? They're not really looking. I mean, sometimes they often want to know things more related to double up food bucks by county. So we're not really sharing anything. We're not like showing them, well, here's, the Fort Sumner sales, but we can give them an idea if they ask of what's happening in the different communities. So those are all the reasons that market data is super useful for us. And then if later on you can't find the other sheet that we have the link to in our chat, this has the instruction sheets that Andrea put the link to, so you can always go back to the link from here, and then there's another tracking sheet here. So and then there's more information here, as these things say. So this is, and then there's, there goes on to be other information about social media and newsletters, but this one sheet with tools, tips, and tricks is on the website, and it's just got a lot of information. Do you have any questions about anything I just said about this sheet or the website or anything so far? Okay. Thank you. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Do you guys want me to share my screen on the how to collect the market data, or have you gone to the link yourself that Andrea shared in the chat? Because I know it's kind of, it can be a little bit dizzying, you know, to have someone else scrolling for you. But do you want me to bring up the sheet? Okay, Michael's shaking his head yes, and I think I just saw George say yes.
Especially for the
We'll take a
people
look
who
at
are
it and see what
watching.
happens.
Oh, good point, Michael. I always forget about the recording. Okay, let me share again. Thanks for saying that, Michael. So here we go. Hopefully you can see this. This is the how to collect market data. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. About your market. These are the categories of information that we collect. The other thing that I just want to say up front, and it probably says it here, but maybe your photos are under it. We collect this at the end of December. By the end of December is when we need your market data. So, you know, you could do it right after your market closes in October. Most markets close in October. I think it's slightly different for our year-round markets, but yeah, the end of December is our deadline so that we can get it ship shape by the market manager conference. And so about your market. So this is really easy. This is no problem, I don't think, for anybody. We ask the basics of your name, you know, your market, who the market manager is, etc. Okay, customer counts. So this is just, it's pretty basic, but you know, it's one of those things that I'll be interested to hear from Andrea and George exactly how they do it. I've seen markets do this. We know that, you know, one of the best practices, or what seems like from the 20,000 foot view, the best practice is that if you have a volunteer to help count your customers, that is really, that's very useful. So the idea is that you want to count your customers at least on 4 random days, right? If you count them on your best market day, and then you just average that for the rest of the season, that probably wouldn't be very accurate. And likewise, if you counted on a day that was like you had really, you know, maybe it was raining or you just didn't have great attendance, that also wouldn't be very accurate. But if you can at least shoot for doing 4 different times in the season, or once a month, as it says here, then you can just multiply by the total number of days. And so there's a real specific example here. We'll talk about how you do it, but you know, so if on the first day you collected, there were 200 customers, on the second day there was 210, on the third day it must have been raining and it was really windy and horrible and no one showed up and there were just 15, and then on another day they were 30. So for those 4 days there were a total of 455 customers. And so if you divided it by those number of market days, you would have 114. And so then you would take that average number, 114, and you'd multiply it by the number of weeks that your market meets. So if you met 24, and maybe your market meets twice a week, so then, you know, that number might be 48. But I don't know, you might have a different number. Let's say you meet on a Wednesday and a Saturday. You might have a very different you might want to average your Wednesdays and then average your Saturdays, because you might have very different days. But I think everybody here just meets 1 day a week. So the way to do it, and this is why it's great that you're here at the beginning, Donna, is that the easiest thing, I think, is to have a volunteer who is, now the thing that, depending on the kind of location that you have, if you're in a really big park and you have a lot of entrances, it's pretty hard to know if you've got new people coming in. So I'm thinking of like the Albuquerque Downtown Growers Market, and they would need to station a volunteer at each corner, because otherwise, you know, just having one person in one corner, you'd never know. But like George's Market, at least I'm thinking, I can't remember if I'm thinking of Bosque Farms, but one of them, you know, maybe there's just one major entrance where people are walking in. And so you only need to have a volunteer at that one spot with a clicker, and for 15 minutes, they click and count the number of customers during that 15 minutes. Again, this is like a kind of thing where, you know, you're likely not gonna be counting every customer. That is the alternate way, is to try to count every customer, but that seems really hard to me. But if you count the number of customers who are coming in for 15 minutes every hour, so the first, you know, so for 4 hours, that would mean you'd count it 4 times, then you can get an average. So let's hear from, rather than me just talking about what you can read here, Andrea, what did you find was the best way to collect market data? I mean, customer counts.
Well, we did have a volunteer who, we had a weekly volunteer, which was really nice. So she got very adept at taking every, like you said, at 3 or 4 times a year, we would take the market count, the customer count. And prior to that, there was a volunteer who would come in 3 times during the year and take the count. We've switched locations since I've been manager twice. And so at our first location, so I'll step back and say we have about 400 on average customers we know, because we've taken this data. And it was feasible for our volunteer to take those counts complete throughout the day because of how people came in and out. And so when at our location where we had 2 entrances, the volunteer would place themselves right in the middle of market, and she was a meditator, and so she would go into the zone and she would just watch both entrances and people coming in and out. And she was able to get a very accurate count. At our new location, especially with COVID, we have it shut down, so there's just one entrance and exit. And the volunteer who does it, then she actually would run the EBT machine and be able to take the count. We had a line in the mornings before folks would come in, and so it was really easy to count the whole line. And then she would just count as people. She was really good at multitasking, so she'd click that clicker every time people came in. And what was so helpful about getting a total count, because we did only have a 400, I don't think is like a huge outrageous number. We had an idea throughout the market of how and when people were coming in. And so we'd see, we could get, especially during COVID, we could see how quickly we could get people in and out of the market when we had to like only let so many people in the market at a time. But we also knew that in the morning we had a big rush and we'd see the majority of our customers, and then we'd see a third of the customers throughout the rest of market. And so that was really helpful as well for my role as manager, knowing when I could be where I needed to be when, because of how busy market was. I knew that later on in market, I could go and interact with the vendors, while in the morning they were just going to be slammed until 10:30. And then we had 2 markets. We have a Saturday and a Wednesday market. And so I would actually do separate reporting for those 2 markets so that we could give the marketing association an accurate account on what Wednesday market was like, where we'd maybe see 200 people at a Wednesday market. And so I would do 2 different count days to have a separate count, because both of those markets were so different in different locations.
That's great, thank you. Donna, I don't mean to pick on you, but since you're the new person who hasn't done it yet, do you have any questions? Does that like sound doable? What do you think?
Since our market is so small, well, basically small, we're going to be in a park, and I don't think it's going to be a problem to count people. Probably what I'll do is, if I have to on the busy days, is I'll be on one end of the park, and then someone will be on the other end. I'll just have them count their side, and I'll count my side, and we'll match.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. George or Carol, do you have any particular questions or thoughts about customer counting?
Actually, I don't have any questions. We do have one volunteer that just started this year. And she carries this little clicker and she clicks on customers that come through. Our market is relatively small when it first starts up. Both of them are. And so we don't have much in the way of problems with that. The biggest challenge, of course, is the weather in the afternoon on the Tuesday market. That is invariably dusty, windy, nasty. 2 weeks ago, we had a really, really bad blow, dust all over the place, and we had so many customers, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe the amount of customers we had. It was wonderful. A lot of our vendors sold out of their fresh veggies, and there's quite a few fresh veggies coming through our market. I thought it was great.
Great, that's good. I think the Carol, is there anything from your side? I think collecting the sales is going to be the hard one. That's probably the biggest challenge. We'll go through the other things are a little more perfunctory, but I think sales is the trickiest. But Carol, was there any questions or any thoughts on customer counting?
No, and I have a clicker. I have a couple of clickers actually, but I never have volunteers. We're so small. But I did do the counts during COVID, especially the first year and also last year. And it really gave me a sense of where our market is. I mean, really, we're a small market. We're only open from 8:30 to 11:30 on Saturdays after the 4th of July till hopefully the second week of October. And we have a lot of regulars and we just are small. So really, truthfully, we average 75 to 125 customers. Period. The end. That's about how it is for the times that I have been doing it. So the clicker is great, and I think for me it's been easy enough to just do it myself. The only potential volunteer I had was about 7 years old, and I was not sure what that was going to look like. So that was just a for fun collector. That wasn't a reality collector.
Right. I'm picturing the 7-year-old really enjoying the clicking thing and yep.
Exactly.
All righty. So the next category of information that you'll be collecting are the number of market days. And again, this one's pretty easy because you'll know exactly what your market schedule is like. And it's just got, this is just a number, how many market days your market is open. So that's a pretty self-explanatory one. Vendor days might take a minute for your brain to translate, but it's also not very hard. This is, as the sheet here says, it's the number of days that all the vendors are selling. So, and you probably do this for different reasons. I mean, you're collecting vendor fees, you're, I don't know, depending on if you're a double up market. I mean, you've got every market, you've probably got a list of who is attending or how many vendors. And so when you record the number of vendors that are selling each day, well, I'm just going to read this here. Record the number of vendors that are selling that day. Repeat vendors will be counted many times through the season. At the end of the season, total this number up for the number of vendor days. So if you had 10 vendors present during each market for 24 markets, you would have 240 vendor days. So it is, oh, somebody is coming, Rail Yards. We will admit them. Woohoo. Let's see who's here from Rail Yards. Is it you, Alaska? Somebody will join or will say who they are shortly. So, okay, so that's vendor days. Oh, there it is. Hello, Alaska. Good to see you. We're just going through market data. Here we are. And we're getting to the most fun one. So, well, 5 is still, fairly straightforward. The approximate number of vendors that are farmers versus ranchers, not craftspeople, bakers, or processed goods. But you probably have a pretty good idea. You probably know if you have 1 meat vendor or 2 meat vendors, and if it's 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 10, you know what the percentage is. So we're just wondering how many ranchers are at the markets. And then for the mother of all the tricky pieces of information to collect is sales. And again, this is, probably one of the most important pieces of information because everybody wants to know what are the gross sales over time and how is your market doing over, is it dipping? Did it dip during COVID or did it come back real strong? All of that is really useful. So, okay, and we look at both the total agricultural sales, and I'm really curious how maybe Alaska or George divide this or how they find the difference, but we want to know, if possible, the agricultural sales versus the non-agricultural sales, which means like the processed foods, the baked goods, crafts. Some of you have a completely separate, like your craft market might be, if there is a craft market, it's totally separate. Everybody has a different way of collecting this. There are some, I don't know how many, but there are some markets that ask that their vendor fees are based on how much the vendor is earning. So that can be one way of guesstimating. That's something that the Silver City market has used. But the question is how you're going to collect this from folks. And we've got another collection form that you can use. It's really, I could show you the collection form, but maybe, let me see if that one is, maybe before I even look for the collection form. There it is. Yeah, there's a link. There's definitely a link from that other page, and George is showing us there, and we've got it both in English and in Spanish for those vendors who might need Spanish. So George, do you use, let's just find out from people here, how you collect. Do you use that form, George?
I do use this form that I showed you. One of the things that my volunteer does is during her stay at the market, about halfway through, she goes through and I perforate this form. She cuts off these little pieces. At the end of the market day, the vendor, and this is strictly by their honesty, puts in the numbers and they throw it into an anonymous vendor reporting jar. At the end of the season, I go through, do the counts, because it has not only which market it is, but also it has on it the date of the market. I don't know whether you can see that or not, but it works for us for the most part. There's a couple of vendors there that do not really care for doing any market help. And I kind of explained to them that it is very useful for not only them, but also for the marketing association and us as a whole in order to do this reporting. Sometimes you just can't make it go in one year and come out the other. So it's hard to do, but I do it that way.
Thank you. That's helpful, George. I was going to try to pull up the little sheets here in a second.
I think it's at the bottom of the document you're sharing. You were sharing, Denise.
Oh, was it at the bottom of that?
I think so.
Okay, well, I am no longer sharing that, so I'll have to go back to it. What about you, Alaska? How do you collect your sales data?
We actually use a vendor management software called managemymarket.com. And I like George, it's hard to get some people to submit it. Some vendors submit it every single week. We ask them to submit it. It goes by week. So there's just a little drop down. You put the date, you put how much you made, and it actually does have you can customize it. So you can have it be double up food bucks, WIC, cash, whatever. Not a whole lot of vendors use it. We usually have when we're really, really working hard, like a 50% response rate. And then at the end of the season, we multiply it by, the response rate that didn't go in. So we do have to do a little bit of math and guesstimating. And it is kind of nice because it does actually show what type of vendor it is. So we just sort a giant spreadsheet at the end of the season and figure out how much was farm and ranch and how much was everything else. But it does take getting on top of them every week. We're trying to this year do like a monthly check, so we can at least check some of the vendors that we know are like making a ton of sales and try to get on them for entering it. Because at the end of the season, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, can you please enter this data from like 6 months ago? So we try to get on them we're going to try to get on them every month this year instead of at the very end. But it's hard with all the other things that you do, and sometimes we just have to use as much mathematical extrapolation as we can. But we do send emails out. We kind of have instructions, but some vendors just don't want to log in and use the computers, or some vendors don't feel comfortable disclosing their numbers. Our booth fee is not based on percentage of sales, but the system can actually automatically calculate a booth fee based on the percentage of sales. So it can do that, but we haven't used that function.
Yeah, it's, there are definitely, thank you for that, Alaska. There are definitely some guesstimates that are happening, educated guesses based on things that are known. And so it isn't a perfect system at all. And the only thing that ever makes us feel a little better, at the end of the day, when we're looking at this, aggregating the data, is that it's probably somewhat consistent over time. So even though Alaska's, for example, may not be 100% accurate, she is using the same system over the years. And so it is, they're educated guesses. It's better than nothing, and so, yeah, go ahead, George.
At this point, I would like to offer you a insight or foresight or backside, whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of us dummies out there that are not really familiar with getting into and searching through this mass maze of computerized crap that comes out. I am, for one, I can't find this or I can't find that because I don't know where to look for it. I don't want to be a total jerk, but by the same token, I can't sometimes find out where to go from one point to another. And I cannot get some people that I know of to give me a good, solid answer all the time. It's, you're bothering me, don't bother me, come back some other day type thing. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to me. I'm not an ignorant individual. I do have my days when it's better than others, but by the same token, I need to know, and I can't find it. Can't find it most of the time unless I know what I'm looking for. Most of the time, I don't know what I'm looking for, and it is a constant search through anything that I'm looking for and around. It's hard for persons that did not grow up in the era of computer type thing. You know, you grow up with your finger pushing the buttons to giving answers to the teacher in class. Whereas I grew up using a rotary telephone to hello. That's where I'm at.
Right. Well, George, let me ask you a question. No, I get it. I struggle to find things occasionally too. Is there, I mean, I know when you don't know what you're looking for, you can't find it. That's for sure. But do you, if you need us to send, for instance, just speaking concretely, do you want like this one sheet that I started with that had the overview of the tools, tips, and tricks? I'm happy to send you a PDF of that in email if that would be helpful. I know that, no.
You could, because I don't know whether I've got it or not. Or
Okay.
I probably can look it up. But
No, but
sure.
I'm happy to send that. And Donna, would you like me to send you that PDF as well? And that way, you know, it just kind of, you hedge your bet that you've got it. Okay. And Donna, I don't know for sure. I'm guessing you're in our software, but will you put your email address in the chat for me? And then, yep, that'd be great. So I will send that PDF to everyone here. And if you're watching this recording and you need a copy, just email Denise or Michael, and we'll be happy to email you a PDF of the tips and tricks. And yeah, George, you're not alone. It's not always easy to find things. That is true.
Another place that to look, and I haven't gone through the folder we received this year, and I know in the past, because I've been a manager for so many years, I don't always go through it. But when I'm searching for something that I can't find online, that I need to make copies of my vendor tracking sheet or the customer sheet, a lot of times that the hard copies are also in the folder that we look for, and a lot of good instructions and timelines. If there's ever a question, going back to that. Did you get a folder this year, George? We recently got one in the mail.
Absolutely. What I did was I take this form for our WIC, and I submit the information on it on a weekly basis. It helps me because I don't want to sit here at the end of the year and go for 15 hours doing that stuff. That's just not, and then not only that, Sarah would probably come down on me with the hobnail boots or something. But I just, it makes a really neat way to go back and track what your sales are. At the vendor payout sheet, I use this. I'm kind of a hard copy type guy because I don't have access to computer at market. I don't want the dust flying into my computer if I had one. I am not an Android type individual that can click on this thing and come up with this entire batch of information that I can't even see the screen when it's so bright outside. And that is just really a big challenge. So I use the hard copies. I pay on a daily basis. When our market ends, we pay out that day for the coin counts that they have. Our vendors don't mind a bit to stick around 15 minutes at the end of the market day to get paid. They like it, as a matter of fact. We don't have the long lines that the rail yard has, or down south, or any large markets like in Albuquerque. I have a small market, 2 small markets. And so we pay out in that fashion. I don't carry a lot of money. Some are checks, some are cash, but we do pay. And at that time, when they come up to the market desk, most everybody has either a debit coin, cash, or a EBT coin, or double up food bucks, fresh RX. They have one of those coins to turn in, because we also do the debit card at my table. So at the end of the market day, I pay them. They like pay. They like their money because they need their money, just like everybody else needs money.
I'm realizing, listening to you speak, George, that that's a great time to, because we would probably also use the hard copy that Denise was sharing on the screen for the sales data. And I'm realizing while they're waiting to be reimbursed or have a check written for them, that's a great time to hand that to them and say, I'll hand you, you know, and of course we don't want to hold their money or threaten them, but just have that be a system where we hand them the sheet at the time that they hand in. Because we also do those little tickets like you showed us to keep track of what we owe them and what they owe us in fees. And so they could be filling this out quickly. They could be prepared to fill it out, and they know they get their check when they hand it in to us, just as a system, not as a threat in any way.
Yep.
Right. I have a little bucket at the table there that has pens in it. They're help themselves, you know, it's type thing. And I'll normally be doing a count, or my helper will be doing a count on the coins. And I said, did you turn in your sales slip? You know, I'll give them a reminder. I won't hold anything in hostage, because that's just not what we're all about. We're there to help the farmer. We're not there to hold them up. But I try and explain to them, if I have a very stubborn, he'll get it next week. I says, okay, next week. And then next week I will go out towards the first of the week, or first of the market day, and talk to him. Where's my market form that you were going to turn in last week? Here, you know, and they know I'll come after them. But I try as best as I can to keep our market as friendly as possible. And I think we have a good system. We've got some good vendors there, from meat, honey, baked goods, microgreens, all sorts of vegetables, from asparagus on. You know, it's just really good. And we're not on the south end of the state where you get warmer weather sooner, but we do have people that grow in hoop houses and stuff like that, which do a good job.
I know I saw you had, there was a Facebook picture recently, George, with artichokes, and I was really jealous. I was like, oh, I want artichokes. Donna, what do you think? Any, questions? I mean, you're really smart to kind of try to get an idea of this at the beginning of the season, because I think one of the hardest things is at the end of the season, if somebody has done absolutely nothing to collect data, and then they're like, oh my God, then it's a little harder to go back. But
well, I've read all the papers, and so I knew I had to collect it already. So I actually did use that form.
all right.
And we had it on Saturday, and we ended up having to move our market because it was windy and cold, kind of like George is saying. And so I grabbed these papers, took them with me, all my stuff, and I handed them to vendors to begin with. And I said, I'll just need this before you leave. And I had no problem getting them. Of course, we had as many vendors, this time as we will build as we go. So
that's fabulous. That's that's really terrific. And yeah, that's good. When, and the other thing that I think a really small market, it depends on your market, but I can picture, for instance, at the South Side Santa Fe market, where most of their sales are EBT, Double Up, WIC, Fresh RX. Like, they almost do no cash business. It's something that, is pretty obvious to anybody who attends the market. And so, in that case, and that might be pretty rare, but, all of those transactions are captured in the EBT records and in the Fresh RX redemption. And so, if they hadn't collected data in any other way, they might say, well, we've probably got like 90% of our sales, that we know what they are. And then they just kind of can multiply a little bit as well. So sometimes you can also use some of the known sales that you've got, and guesstimating Yeah, I'm just kind of pausing, thinking if there's anything else. This is the end of the form. There it is in Spanish. I'm going to stop sharing this. I don't think there was anything else in this form. Those are the major categories of data. Alaska, I'm just curious because you've mentioned Manage My Market, and I kind of know about it from, hearing about it over the years, but I don't remember, like, what do they charge you for that service?
The cost is $15 per vendor. Which is why we just charge an application fee. And then that covers the cost of the software. And it's really helped us over the years. It does everything from, it has like a map, scheduler, kind of like a big like Tetris board where you can move all the vendors around. It has, keeps all their contact info in one place so we can contact farmers the next year who haven't applied. But yeah, the cost is $15 per vendor, which at first we were like, oh, we'll never be able to afford that. But once we kind of worked it into how we charge, it ended up really paying for itself and helps us from, doing a lot of manual entry. And we have a pretty big space market, so doing the forms is a little hard for us, and even with volunteers or helpers, just hard to get all the info out. But we do also do, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, how many vendors do you have total approximately?
So we just doubled our footprint, so we have 165 spaces, and about 100 of those are food. And in the early season, it's a little hard to have enough farmers to be like a full 50% like we're supposed to, but we get up to around 40 farmers. And we have a lot more ranchers now with meat, I've noticed. It fluctuates a lot, especially with the weather, like you guys were saying. This weekend was hell with the wind. I feel like a layer of my skin is like burnt / blown up.
That's great. So there, yeah, I wonder what the I don't know how many markets use it. Maybe in San Juan County, maybe they use it there as well. I know there's a few. I don't remember if the downtown Albuquerque market uses it. I don't think Santa Fe does, but it is interesting, like what the tipping point for a market. Everybody else here is pretty small markets. So yeah, I don't think it's as needed for the tiny.
Yeah, I think it could be good for small markets. It's just nice because it keeps it all in one place and you don't have to worry about losing it, or like if there was a market manager change, all you have to do is change the, get the contact info from, or the login info from the company, and it would all be there, which is kind of nice. But it did take some training. It was a learning curve, but their tech people were super awesome. They did like several, well, we didn't even have Zoom then whenever we started it, but they did several like phone call trainings with us. And they even do that whenever like if we get a new staff or volunteer that's going to start using the system, they like can just schedule a call with them and like walk them through all the different little things, which was nice, so that it wasn't all on me or another staff person to train somebody.
Yeah, that's great.
Pretty nice. Not trying to be a salesperson for them, but I can't imagine like doing our market without it now.
Yeah, that's great. Good to know. Are there other questions about market data or just anything else that you guys want to talk about? I mean, we've only got a few more official minutes, but
I don't know if this was stated explicitly. I saw George hold up his customer record keeping form, which has would you hold that up to the screen again, George, and just show us the little corner where that's where I always keep all of my information as well. And just for Donna, who's new. No, the other one that's the double, where you keep the double up food bucks information at the top of that, Donna, there's a little square at the top. I was trying to get that up to share it on my screen. but there it is, where you can keep record data. It's hard to see, but it's a good place to just, so when at the end of the year, you're going through all your paperwork, that's, you have it all in one place and you don't have to keep too many records.
And Donna, how's it going with Double Up and record keeping and such? Are you pretty good?
Actually, I just got my EBT machine on Friday, and we had the market on Saturday, but I didn't have to use it because no one came in yet for that. So we'll see Saturday when we're in the park.
Well, Sarah Thompson I'm actually at the office for a change today, and Sarah Thompson is standing at my door. So she just got very excited. Here she is.
One of the things that I could tell you that you will probably find a little bit of a challenge with on that new machine is the fact that it's hard to see outside. You've got to be under shade. I tried to make some sort of a little, I tried to make some sort of a little canopy for it, and that worked for the most part. But shade is definitely the way that you have to look at it. The sign in, sign out, or the sign in part is easy. The sign out part is hard to find out if you can't see the screen, because you've got to scroll up or down on that screen to find where to find your functions, and then to find where the sign out section is on that machine. So if you want to give me a call later, I can walk you right through it if you want. It's relatively easy to do after that. I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to take your spot from you.
Yeah, I walked over to say, like, I'm glad that you finally got your machine. Like, I am so glad you finally got your machine.
Yeah, I was talking to Mark and he said, well, I didn't realize that you were going to get your information switched over so quickly. And I'm like, but I had it all there. And well, actually, he told me they were telling me that I had to refill all my forms again and start over again. And I'm like, but it wasn't my fault. My market moved. It's not my choice. So he goes, well, hang on. And then luckily he goes, okay, I put it through. And the other guy got back to me in like a day or so. And I was ready for Mark, but
Yeah,
no Mark.
I don't know. Like, there were, I think, 9 of you guys that like just could not get an EBT machine. So, for various reasons, like I didn't see that I got your email a month ago. So I don't know, but I'm so glad that you have it.
And I'm just reading something because it's just about time to go, but I see something that Alaska put in the chat, the resource, a bilingual tutorial for steps to submit vendor sales online. And so how did you get that, Andrea? It looks like you.
I would be happy to share a link. We actually made PowerPoint slides that have like the steps to do anything, to log in, to forget your password, to submit a sale. And we did it in English on one side and Spanish on one side. And it has been so helpful.
Is it only appropriate for markets that are using Manage My Market though?
Yes, or we made it for, what our protocol is for being late or being absent or paying fees, all those things. And it was a huge project, and we had to have like Spanish speaking board members help and everybody argue about how to say online or internet,
Yeah.
all different ways you can say that.
There you go with online stuff again.
Yes. So many different ways on how to argue about, whether to say click or click. All that stuff.
Yeah, it's all tricky. Alaska, if you send me that resource link, we could post it on our website where George will never find it, but we could also send it to, we can email the resource to George and Donna.
Yeah, I'd be happy to show some examples. It's a big project. We did it in Canva actually, and we had like a bunch of people. It was nice because so many people could access it and like update a word or an inflection, and it's a living document. We keep changing, and when technology changes, that doesn't help either, because something will be updated on a website, and then we'll be like, oh gosh, now we have to redo all the steps on how to do this.
Yeah, it's still, it might be helpful, you know, to see it. There is also an English, I assume, an English translation, right? So yeah, if later on Alaska, just send it to me and we'll make it sure it gets out. So
Denise,
I think, yeah, go
If you
ahead.
please, give me a call in a minute. Can-
I will.
you have time?
I have another meeting, but I
That's fine.
okay.
Whenever.
Okay. Can I do that later, George?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's
Okay.
nothing pressing.
Okay, will do. So I think that kind of wraps us up. We are at
I just wanted to let you all know too, I dropped in the chat the market data report that we give at the annual conference. So whenever we do collect all of the market data from you all, we do compile it into a nice document. And so I dropped that into the chat so you can take a look at it, just so you know, because it combines pretty much everybody around the state's numbers. And I think that would just be nice to see the end product. So again, that's in the chat. And
I'll send that in the link that I send to you guys via email as well.
perfect. All right, so yeah, we're about 5 minutes over, but I want to thank all of you for joining us today for the second Market Manager Lunch and Learn that we've had. And I just want to remind you, oh, do you have something to say, Denise? Oh, no. I just want to remind you that the next one that we're going to be doing is on June 13th, so Monday, June 13th. And that's going to be with Veronica Griego from WIC and the Senior Farmer Market Nutrition Program. So this is going to be a great time that you'll have with Veronica to ask her questions and learn again about the changes that you heard at the annual conference about WIC and so forth. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you on June 13th. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.